The film opens with a secluded house, away from society. It is owned by a couple named Ed and Connie, who have a son named Charlie. One day, Ed takes Charlie to school on his way to work, leaving Connie alone. She heads to the city to buy some supplies for Charlie's birthday, but gets caught up in a dust storm on the streets. She tries hailing a cab, but no one stops due to the storm. On top of that, she gets dirt in her eyes and bumps into a handsome young man named Paul, who is carrying a pile of books. His books scatter on the ground, and so do Connie's supplies. After picking them up, he notes that Connie is bleeding from her knees. He tries to hail her a cab, but when that doesn't happen, he invites her to his apartment so she can disinfect her wound. She accepts the invitation and bandages her wound in his bathroom. Once she arrives at the lounge, she calls home and lets Charlie know that she will be arriving home late due to the storm inconvenience. When it comes to interacting with Paul, she praises his extensive book collection and his thoughtfully arranged apartment. Paul, having a hard time receiving a compliment, lets Connie know that he's crashing his friend's apartment and that the books belong to him. After the storm settles and Connie decides to head back home, Paul hands her a book as a souvenir and asks her to read a certain page from it. She reads that page right away, which summarizes to a beautiful message for its readers. It suggests that life is eternal, which is why one should live in the moment and have as much fun as possible. Connie thanks Paul for the book and returns home to Charlie, who has cluttered the house and is secretly watching women's wrestling. Conveniently, Connie's maid Glow is at home to look after things. Hence, Connie gets free time to rest. When Ed arrives home, Connie tells him about the accident and her befriending a new friend named Paul. At first, Ed gets jealous of Paul in a playful manner because he knows Connie has the charms to attract any man possible. Though he does ask Connie to send some complimentary drinks to Paul as a thank you gesture. Later he shoots Connie while making love to her, which is a rather creepy fetish. The next day, when Ed leaves for work and takes Charlie to school along with him, Connie picks up Paul's book to read. Surprisingly, a note with Paul's phone number written on it falls from the book, which piques Connie's curiosity. She travels back to town and uses a payphone to call Paul at his number. She wishes to know his address so she can send him some champagne, but he prefers Connie visiting him instead. Connie eventually does visit him and gets to know more about him. In a weird heat of the moment, she feels attracted to him and nearly gets physical with him, but she breaks contact and leaves immediately without any explanation. Since she's in town, she visits Ed at his workplace and brings him a sweater as a gift. For a moment, Connie doubtfully watches Ed's secretary Lindsay, who is young and beautiful. Despite being busy, Ed tries it on and thanks her, whereas Connie is busy eyeing Lindsay, a young and beautiful colleague of Ed. When they return home, Ed notes that Connie is zoned out while doing house chores, but he doesn't take it seriously. Things indeed are more serious than he imagines, because Connie visits Paul once again and engages in a slow dance with him, which turns on both of them. Scenes cut straight to Connie taking the subway back home. She visibly appears guilty while recalling an intimate and wild lovemaking session with Paul, which was escalated after the dance. On the other hand, Ed coincidentally meets a mutual friend, with whom Connie was supposed to meet. In reality, she had lied about seeing the friend so she could get into town to visit Paul. His friend further confirms that he did not have any plans with Connie, which leads Ed to suspect her. That night, Ed asks Connie if she loves him, to which Connie immediately replies that she does. Despite her love for Ed, she continues seeing Paul because he's young and twice as passionate as Ed. She plays her role in the family well and doesn't get suspected. One day she goes to a diner with Paul for the first time, where she doesn't realize Ed's friend is hanging out with an associate of his. She carelessly acts bubbly around Paul and even kisses him publicly. When she returns home, she takes a bath and thinks of Paul, but her moment is ruined when Ed joins her in the bathtub out of nowhere. He tries to make love to her, but she gets uncomfortable and leaves mid-bath. The next day, Ed notes Connie putting on a new dress and a pair of shoes. He believes she's getting dolled up for their lunch date, but Connie breaks it to him that she is canceling their lunch date due to an urgent facial appointment. Ed secretly suspects her but pretends to pamper her with lovely compliments, amidst which he gets her to spill the name of her salon. When Connie leaves, he immediately calls at the saloon, which confirms that his wife has no appointments with them. Whereas he burns with curiosity, Connie bumps into her old girlfriends, Sally and Tracy, who wish to hang out and have lunch. Despite Connie's countless excuses, they drag her to the restaurant, which is directly opposite Paul's apartment building. Hence, she seizes the opportunity to call Paul from the restaurant's landline and invite him there. The two secretly meet in the bathroom and indulge in a sinful lovemaking session. Once done, she returns to her friends while Paul sneakily leaves. Sally eyes him on her way out and admires his beauty. She fantasizes about having an illegitimate affair with him despite being married, but Tracy warns her of the consequences of having an affair, which can destroy a marriage. Connie secretly takes a lesson from her advice and visits Paul to end things. but he's too immature to understand that her marriage can be ruined and pulls her in for another lovemaking session. On the other hand, Ed meets his friend by chance, who tells him about seeing Connie flaunting a younger man at a diner. Ed becomes so furious deep down that he gets his friend fired. Now that his suspicions have been confirmed, he hires a private detective to find out who Connie is seeing. To further make things easy for the detective, Ed announces to Connie that he's leaving town for a work trip. Connie becomes relieved and openly hangs out with Paul on the street, oblivious to the detective who's secretly taking her pictures. That day she gets so invested in Paul that she forgets to pick Charlie up from school. When she later comes to her senses, she sulks and realizes she's turned into a terrible mother. When Ed returns, the detective hands him the photos, allowing Ed to further inquire about Paul and his location. On the other hand, Connie visits the city to buy some groceries. On her way home she fights her urges and fails. She turns her car around and heads back to meet Paul. Much to her disappointment, she catches Paul invested in another woman, one of his own age. She burns with jealousy and launches an attack on the woman, so Paul physically pushes her away. He brings her to his apartment and gets intimate with her instead of communicating the misunderstanding, which goes to show how emotionally unavailable Paul is. Later that day, Ed finds out about Paul's apartment building. Since it is for residents only, Paul waits outside for the doors to be opened by a resident. When that happens, he seizes the opportunity to barge in. He finds Paul's apartment and approaches him in a civilized manner. Paul welcomes him and patiently offers him a drink. While keeping his calm, Ed asks Paul if he knows about Connie's marriage and her son. Paul carelessly admits to knowing every aspect of Connie's life and deliberately starting an affair with her, which Ed doesn't take well. On top of that, he gets provoked when he, Paul, boasts about knowing Connie better than him. Ed is ultimately pushed towards his homicidal tendencies when he watches an ice globe at Paul's apartment, which he had gifted Connie with great sentiment. He suddenly gets a feeling of disorientation, which leads him to whack Paul's head with the ice globe. He whacks his head multiple times, leading to Paul's demise. As he realizes what he's done and gets a feeling of panic, Connie's voicemail reaches Paul's landline. When Paul listens to it, he becomes reassured to hear that Connie is trying to end her affair because of her guilty conscience. Her voicemail gives him the strength to dispose of Paul's corpse, which he wraps in a rug and shoves in his car's trunk. On the other hand, Connie notes his absence from Charlie's talent show. Ed himself recalls the talent show and quickly changes clothes in a public bathroom before arriving there. Connie notes the discomfort in him, but he remains composed. After the show, when the family gets back in their car, someone mistakenly hits the back of their car with his car, which pops open the trunk. The man lets Ed know about the trunk scene, so Ed walks out to close it. Due to Paul's corpse, the trunk takes a long time to close, which nearly gets him caught. Now he drops his family off at home and heads to the landfill to dispose of Paul's corpse. The next day he recalls that Paul told him about how Connie hates being away from the city. To win her back, he offers Connie a new house in the city, but she humbly denies his offer. As time passes, Ed's guilty conscience gets the best of him, and he becomes heavily disturbed. The day after Paul's disappearance, two cops visit Connie when Ed's not home. They inquire about Paul since they have found her phone number in his apartment. She nervously twists and turns her statement to send them away. When Ed arrives home, Charlie excitedly tells him about the police visit. Ed becomes alarmed and asks Connie what their visit was regarding. Connie can't talk about Paul, so she whips up another lie to cover the situation. A few days later, the cops discover Paul's corpse from the landfill and visit Connie again, this time in Ed's presence. The cops force a confession out of her after spilling that they saw her car parked outside his building. Ed covers for his wife and takes the cops away with him, leaving Connie crying. Later, when she goes to pick up Ed's clothes from the dry cleaners, she discovers her and Paul's pictures that the detective took. Realizing that Ed knows about her affair, she nervously heads home, where Ed is seen showing his ice globe collection to his friends. Among those globes, Connie spots the one she gifted to Paul. She gasps and figures that Ed has something to do with Paul's disappearance. At night, the couple finally confronts each other, during which Ed emotionally breaks down and confesses to his crime. Their argument is heard by Charlie, who becomes disturbed. For his sake, they grow silent. Their relationship grows distant and cold. Connie cries relentlessly and imagines never having met Paul in the first place. Ed, who loves his wife deeply, forgives her and gives her emotional support. He also decides to turn himself into the police, but Connie convinces him not to. Sometime later, the family attends a social event together, after which they drive back home. Connie plans on liquidating their assets and fleeing the country before the cops find out about Ed's crime, but Ed drives the car outside the police station, projecting that he's turning himself in no matter what. Here, the movie ends.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.